Hello and welcome to the Anomaly Project, The Agenda, the show where we look ahead to our upcoming episode. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as just every week is the one and only Steve Mera. Now, Steve, this week we're going to be speaking to Mark Olly. We're going to be looking at archaeology, forbidden finds, forbidden history even. It's going to be a brill show.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I always consider Mark as like he should be some type of professor who's teaching this sort of stuff because he's the wealth of knowledge. I haven't found an area which he's a bit dark on, to be honest with you. I mean, he's been involved in paranormal and supernatural and ufological and ancient mysteries, you name it, And so I think, he's a very wise man. Let's put it that way. And he's been at it for years,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. It's
Yeah, for
fascinating
sure.
the stuff though. What he knows, most people have forgotten, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have to get his, as we ask all our guests, how did you get involved in this? But I also understand he had a little bit of a background in music, so that's a bit of a unique
Yeah,
journey. We'll have to speak to him about that. But, you
intriguing
know,
that, isn't it?
yeah, ask him what kind of thing really drug him into, dragged him, should I say, into archaeology? Because, like you say, his interest in his fields, his research goes in loads of different directions. We're talking Knights Templar, we're talking UFOs, like you say, paranormal stuff,
Yeah.
and it all ties in together. So we should
No,
get
it's
some
sort
interesting
of been,
answers from him.
yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting because sometimes you get some archaeologists which are so academic, they don't even look into other areas.
Hmm.
But Mark has got quite a very curious mind and he sees the connectivity and
Yeah.
he's like a dog with a bone. He wants to find out more, and the amount of research. I mean, I've seen the work that he's done and the books and the research, and I think, bloody hell, it's like scholarship type stuff. It's incredible, and you've got to understand the old languages
Hmm.
and how the references and how it works and stuff, because that alone is a mind bender, to be honest
Oh
with you.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like you say, I mean that's half the problem, isn't it? That only a select few people do know these old languages, isn't it? We're not even talking going that far back here. We're talking Greek, Latin.
Yeah,
All I know we can teach ourselves this, and perhaps we should. But like you say, it would be a great way of being able to understand the past a little bit more if we all were a little bit more fluent with those
I
topics.
think it's very watered down, buddy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes, as years have gone by, little bits and bobs have come back gone into the national curriculums of schools
Hmm.
and things, and you get taught some fresh material, which seems to be more evidence, but I can think back to history lessons when I was at school, and it wasn't even true. And I was thinking, I was really interested. I was doing all this type of, oh, I'm fascinated. None of it was true.
Yeah,
No,
no,
because now we know, we've learned, and like I've said, science has to continue moving, so forever moving. I think I was taught a load of rubbish in
yeah,
part, but then it's not their fault because this is what is pushed out, and this
yeah.
is the general thing of what people are being taught. But the accuracy of it is very questionable.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to speak to him about that as well because I've mentioned before about knowing people who have literally said to me that the idea of hiding things behind closed doors in the archaeological field is very true. It does happen, but in terms of like we should speak to him about whether there could have been a civilization before the flood, whenever that was, or the cataclysm, because
Pre-flood, yeah,
because there's a lot of evidence. I mean, I think a good example is Dr. Virginia McIntyre Steen or Steem-McIntyre, should I say?
yeah.
And she carried out some. She was at a site in Mexico, and I forget the site, so forgive me. Drop it in the comments if you know.
Mm.
And she was basically just doing standard archaeological dig. She was using 4 or 5 methods that had been approved by her university and her scholars and colleagues, peers, should I say. And she carried out this experiment twice, and she discovered that there was a human presence back there at least 250,000 years ago, long before mainstream science says there was. Now she was almost run out of archaeology. She had to fight and fight and fight to get her paper eventually
Yeah,
published.
yeah.
And again, all the methods she used were pre-approved. She was essentially correct. And
Yeah,
so I'd like to get his thoughts on that because it seems like there's a whole wealth of information that's just buried away
I
right
don't
under
know
our
why they
nose.
want to bury it away. I mean, what's the
No,
problem? What's the problem with turning around and saying humanity's been around longer than we initially thought? I mean, there's things like you can't get away from, like, Göbekli Tepe, for an example,
mm, mm.
and it predates, many different, like in Ireland, some of the things there, the cairns, what they predate the pyramids.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
but the aspect of the sky linked in
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
like. where does that end? You know, how did it start and why is it circumnavigated the whole globe and they're all doing the same thing? You know, it's obviously something significant that's gone on there. It was so much information, knowledge has been lost.
Yeah.
And I can only assume that maybe there've been some forms of catastrophes that's wiped out probably about 98% of humanity at the time,
Mm.
only leaving 2% to thrive and repopulate the world. And you would lose not a vast amount of knowledge. And now
Oh,
and again, we dig something up and we go, "What the hell is this? It's an ancient computer or whatever." You know, it's they're always finding things. You
oh
know,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
evidence of it.
I mean, I think the thing about it, the idea of a cataclysm happening, there's been
Yeah,
numerous researchers have pointed to, around
yeah.
10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago. And there's, some evidence for that, circumstantial, albeit and speculative. And I remember Graham Hancock was talking about this. He was looking at the symbolism of the snake. I don't necessarily know if I buy into it fully, but his argument was compelling. He was saying if there were meteorites and comets zooming down to Earth, they would leave a very snake-like appearance.
Yeah,
And that's why these snakes are these ancient sites, which in
ancient.
turn also are
Yeah,
tied into the stars as if it's some kind of monitoring station. And so, yeah, I think the idea that something did happen, and that could also explain why, ancient civilizations were so preoccupied with the stars and the
I
movements of
think
the
so.
stars,
Yeah,
because
it would.
a warning that just doesn't leave the subconscious almost.
No, because everything relies on things like that. I mean, the catastrophes that might have taken place, and we God knows how many of them there've been, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know, I mean, it could have been a number of things. These stories of, did we get struck by some type of meteorite which, which caused the melting of the ice caps
yeah,
and huge amounts of water flooded areas of land?
yeah, yeah,
Or was there a pole shift change? And that caused it, maybe both have happened. We may have had two, three, even more catastrophes throughout life
oh yeah,
as humanity. So who's to know? But one thing I like, you go to like Puma Punko, which is on the top of a mountain in Peru. It's an ancient site, or the H blocks. People probably
yeah,
know what we're talking about. What we see when we see images and they're H blocks and all locked together and stuff, they never were. That's because they were basically dug up from the ground.
yeah,
They
yeah,
were buried in silt, as
yeah,
if the ocean floor just covered over them. And they dug them up and they put them together and they go, "Oh, wow, this is incredible. This is what it must have been." Well, yeah, there obviously was something there like that, but how does it get so high? Lake Titicaca,
mm,
highest
yeah,
lake in the world. But it's an area. How did it get flooded with water? How did it get there? It
yeah.
just doesn't make sense. So something must have happened. And now, I mean, I was only looking tonight at the new documentary thing on the Baltic Sea anomaly.
Hmm.
And it's a
Right.
strange looking
Yeah.
thing, but it's made of stone, but it's on the bottom of the ocean. And it's
Yeah.
so profoundly looking. There's steps on it.
Oh
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
if there's steps on it, then it must have been on the land at some stage for people to walk up it.
Yeah. I mean, you'll find those underwater locations all over, can't you? I mean, around the coast of India and then some off the coast of America. Even in Malta, we spoke about this a few
There
weeks ago
is.
with the
Yeah.
tracks that go out
Yeah.
into the water. And so, that isn't conspiracy nonsense. I mean, they've been pretty much established that they're there. The argument always comes back to is it natural or is it not? And a lot of
Well,
these are so
some of these are
precise.
clearly
So
built, clearly
yeah,
built. Some of
exactly.
these manufactured by human hands, of course, but as it speaks volumes as to a time when the sea wasn't where it is now, or the ocean,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
it's covered over. So you got to consider how vast the amount of water we have on planet Earth
Hmm.
and what's still out there that we haven't found. It must be so much, which would have
Yeah.
been consumed by water. If it was a pole shift change, because we talk about Antarctica, and we say, well, okay, well, if it was a flourished land at one time, but a
Mhm.
pole shift would turn everything. So all your dry regions become wet, all your wet
Oh
regions
yeah.
become
Yeah.
dry. People would have had to vacate very, very quickly. Did Atlantis sink to the oceans or does the seas rise? Because what's the difference?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that's opposed to pole shifting, at least a significant movement of the pole, is there's a few sites. I think Angkor Wat's one of them, sites in and around that region. And they're supposed to point north. When you point them, when you follow their trajectory,
Mm.
It doesn't point to true north. It's north-ish. And I
Yes.
can't remember the researcher's name. It might have been Hapgood. I'm not sure. But basically, I'm not sure if that's correct. But essentially, a researcher came out and said, look, if you take the Earth back X amount of time with these ancient sites, you can pinpoint the year when it actually faced true north. And he did
Yeah.
this across about 24,000, 30,000
Yeah,
years. So
because
that
it
would
must have done at
suggest it
some
happened
stage.
several
Yeah.
times over that
Yeah.
period alone. And not only has that happened several times, but the fact that these monuments and temples were facing true north at that point suggests that there was ancient civilizations that must have
Yeah.
built them then. So there's more
Exactly.
evidence out there than you think, really. There really
There
is.
really is, because they noted that with the Egyptian pyramids and the star shafts.
Yes.
Because when they tried to line them up with the stars, they didn't quite line up.
No, that's right.
But
Yeah.
they had to
Yeah.
go back in time
Hmm.
to a time when they did line up.
Yeah.
And this is where, Robert Bauval came
Yep.
forward
Yep.
when he was doing his research with Graham Hancock and said, well, they might be older, the pyramids, than what we actually think.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to date stone, to be honest with you. It's
Oh, yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
hard, especially if you don't use mortar and things, because mortar is manufactured, you can kind of work out certain things. But they didn't use that, so precisionally cut the rock. It was hard to find. So predating rock is very, very difficult. You have to look for things that might suggest when. The star shafts put it to a time older than the periods first, what we thought would be constructed, because that is when they line actually up. And
Yes.
they did line up with precision once they got to that right date. But
Yeah,
it
that's right.
predates the known version of how old the pyramids are.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's other evidence around there too. I mean, the Great Sphinx of Giza. I mean, there's clear water erosion
Yeah,
on the
that's got
side
to
of
be.
that. And I think it was Robert Schoch who took it back and said,
Yeah.
look, the only time that natural rainfall, which is what this is, would
Yeah.
have done this was around about 12,000 years ago, which
It
again
kind
goes
of
back
falls
to
in
that
time,
magic
doesn't it?
date.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just the pyramids, mentioning them, I'd like to get his thoughts on the pyramids specifically. I mean, what they might have been used for, because, I think we all know about Christopher Dunn and are they an old power station? But one thing that's interesting about some of the shafts in there is that one of them had one acid, traces of one acid all the way along it, and another one had traces
Yeah.
of another acid. When those are combined with water, you're essentially generating electricity. It's
Well,
similar to the Baghdad
yeah.
factory. So there is actual evidence there that suggests that, well, okay, if the ancient Egyptians didn't build the pyramids and they found them, maybe they were using them for a completely different purpose.
Well, did they provide power? I mean, did they
Well, I
have
mean, this is the
lighting?
thing.
Because there's a mystery as to how did they put all the, paintings and decorations of
Yeah, yeah.
hieroglyphics in certain places. Well, because it goes round so many corners and up and down and stuff, it's
Hmm.
necessarily possible. Because initially they said, oh, they must be using like
Mirrors.
reflected, so that
Yeah,
it's mirrors.
yeah.
But it goes up and down and in and round corner. And, no, I don't think so. So they said, well, they must have used fire then. But well,
No
no,
burn
because you get
marks.
evidence,
Mm,
of it in there, but there isn't any.
yeah,
So if they did have power, that's a way of generating it. I mean, we know that we're not the only civilization that had power. Baghdad battery, like you just said,
yeah, yeah.
was created for something,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Yeah, they certainly understood the logic behind it, even if it didn't work that well or it didn't work. Oh, they certainly understood. You mix this with this and combine that. They understood that that's going to generate power or something.
They were
So,
well ahead. And probably I would say, you know what? I mean, we don't know regarding Atlantis, but one's a civilization that's around, it has to be the Egyptians,
mm,
as far as we know, are absolutely advanced.
yeah,
In many, many ways. I mean, when he first found certain things in tombs, and he presumed, oh, we've got a gold statue. Well, it wasn't actually solid gold. It was electroplated.
yeah, yeah. I know what you
It's like you put an electrical charge to it and put it in gold, and gold attaches to the outside of it. And you think, wow, how the hell were they? What charge? How did they get a charge?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of evidence in the writings as well as like again, this is interpretation, but they were perfectly aware of like sonar technology and sound technology and using frequencies. And I mean, there's even researchers who have suggested that they used, some kind of sound technology to essentially lift stone, which has been demonstrated in the
Well,
modern world
sound
as well.
levitation does
Yeah,
work,
yeah.
I mean, there's a practice that goes on, I think it's in Buddhists, monks, and they do this once a year, and
Hmm.
they take this very large, heavy stone up to the top of this mountain. And
Yeah.
apparently, word has it that they actually levitate it in stages.
Yeah, I know what you're
You
referring
know,
to. Yeah.
and it's yeah, yeah, and I think to myself, wow, I mean, what the hell? You know, who knows? And there's a lot of archaic and mystical things we've probably forgotten, but frequencies definitely. I mean, I think Mark Olley's actually conducted, and not many have, because they
Mm.
don't get opportunity or they don't get allowed in to conduct frequency tests in the pyramids in
Yeah, yeah,
Egypt.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think he has actually been involved in some of that.
Yeah, we'll have to ask me about that because, like you say, I mean, you can get inside there, but you need permission, and it's a lot of form filling and it's a lot of
Two,
like,
you know,
knowing the right people. Just going to say that,
yeah, two, you
a
know.
lot of it. I mean, you can get in there. It depends what you want to do in there, and believe me, they will watch you. They watch you like,
Oh, yeah. Well,
you know.
do you know what? You're off the beaten path when if you visit Egypt. You're facing a gun,
Oh, for
literally,
sure, yeah,
and a
yeah, yeah. I mean,
guard.
they're
You know
lovely
who
people. Don't get me
they
wrong,
are,
lovely,
but
lovely,
there are
lovely
places
people.
where you are not allowed to go.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
was told something some time back, and I was like, and it's a friend of mine. He does tours.
Oh, I think I know
Uh,
what you mean, actually. Yeah,
yeah, saboteurs
yeah,
in Egypt. He's a really nice guy, but he's got connections with the Egyptian government.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's made it quite clear, sort of publicly, about that there are places out there in the Egyptian desert where
Mm-hmm.
you're not allowed to go, which
Mm-hmm.
are guarded, but there are pits. And in those pits are metal filings, huge masses of it. And I said to him, I said, well, what do you think it is? And he says, I think it's the machinery. I think,
Right.
if you put a car engine out there, just for 1,000 years, there'd be nothing left but dust because of the
Mm-hmm.
wind erosion and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But they're vast. And I thought, where? Because people have said, where's all the equipment? Because they must have used equipment.
Oh,
How,
yeah. But I
how
mean,
did he power it?
so much of
Yeah.
Egypt is just like covered up by sand. And
There's a
even if it's,
massive amount.
but like, yeah, exactly right. I mean, the country really, if the country's this big, everything you see is just down this little strip that follows the Nile. All this, just sand and desert. So there's got to be something under there. It's hard to get actual authorization for digs, though, even today, even through professional archaeology, there is a protectionism going on there, and I don't know whether it's for nefarious reasons, but yeah, it'd be nice to see what's actually there, and we should get Mark's views on that because, like you say, that's not just the only location. There are others where there's just so many locations that have got so much information to give.
There is.
So we should get his thoughts on, where are these places, and are the signs of a global civilization
Well,
forming?
that's it. There's always little things coming out. I mean, we had this stir about the radar system that picked
Yeah,
up below the Giza plateau
yeah, yeah.
and apparently saw construction, which is even bigger than the actual height of the pyramids, and you think, what the hell is it? And if that
Mm-hmm.
is right, the construction happened right down there to begin with, and then it just, it's hard to imagine a feat like that, to be honest with you, of
Mm-hmm.
huge, gigantic magnitudes. But I don't know what he thinks about that. I'll have to ask him because it was everywhere at one time, wasn't it? About
Oh yeah.
these scans,
Yeah, I
look
mean,
really
the
strange.
first thing people leap at is like you say, it's naturally made, and it could well be. I mean, there's plenty of other ground technology that's seen tunnels leading from the pyramid to the
It's very
Sphinx and
true.
that kind of thing, and then you throw
Yeah.
in the claims of the halls of record. But at the same time, it could be nothing at all. I mean, the only real way to prove that either way is to get down
Let's
there
get in
and
there.
have a look and broadcast it out to the wider public. Until that happens, there's going to be speculation, and it's hard to
Well,
blame people for that.
it was speculated that people didn't really know that in the Egyptian Giza on the largest pyramid on Giza, the Great Pyramid, he's got these two massive shafts,
Mm,
and I think they're about 20-foot square shafts that just drop down and
hmm.
down and down so deep. And when you get down there, you've got flooded chambers,
Yes, that's right.
but it was only speculated until some researchers actually went in there. And
Yeah.
then you say, oh yeah, it is real.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the flooded chambers again, and this is pure speculation. Some people say it's nothing but nonsense, but that does suggest that the generation of power. You got
Yeah.
water, vibration. If you add in like we were speaking about chemicals, earlier, all these things, and I believe Christopher Dunn when he went in there, if I'm
Yeah, he's done
correct,
some
he,
great
he
research.
saw some fire damage. I think it was in the Queen's chamber. It could have, I don't know which chamber, but it was. He saw significant fire damage. The only fire damage
Yeah.
was actually in there, and he suggested that obviously, if this is a power place, then something's happened,
Mm.
and that's why it's exploded. And I think there was even speculation that when the pyramids were sealed, with the so they glowed, with the granite at the edge, that they were
Yeah.
literally sealed to keep something from getting out, as
It
opposed to
could
stop
be.
people from getting in. Because
Yeah.
you think if it's a nuclear facility, then you've got radiation and stuff. So there's lots to think about. There's lots basically that these locations have still got to give up.
Well, yeah, I mean, now, look, I mean, if we just forget about the bottom of what's underneath that pyramid, which must have taken considerable long lengths of time to build before they even got to the pyramid level.
Oh yeah.
It's not even feasible if they just built a pyramid on the land. It would have the taking the time so to build that pyramid would
Mm.
have been longer than the pharaoh's life, and it was supposed
Oh
to be
yeah.
built for him as a resting place. You couldn't achieve if you came to me at 2 years old and said this is going to be I want a place of resting.
Mm.
He still wouldn't be ready by the time he passed away.
Yeah. I mean,
So it doesn't really add up.
I've heard theories on this. I mean, like it was slaves, but there's no real record of slavery in ancient
No,
Egypt.
actually, they were treated very well
Yeah,
accordingly.
absolutely. And the thing that really stands out though is you talk about how many people it would need to build this, but no one ever talks about, okay, well, where are these people going to sleep and where are they going to eat? What are they going to eat? When are they going to eat? Because according to those figures, they're working 24/7. It
Exactly.
just doesn't quite compute, does it? And like I say, that's not to
No.
say that we can put across other theories just because, but what we can
No,
say is that we don't know when or how they were built.
we
Essentially.
don't. I mean, there is also the possibility that they may have adopted them,
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
and that they were
absolutely.
there and they made them their own, in
Yeah.
a sense of speaking. Because what is really interesting, the Egyptian civilization, the community, they wrote about everything
Mm-hmm.
except for how they built the pyramids.
Oh yeah, there's no records of them, and yep,
I mean, it's the greatest feat ever. So surely they would have documented,
yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
what's also interesting, and specifically about the ancient Egyptian civilization, I know I'm kind of oversimplifying this, so if any Egyptologists are watching this, I apologize, but
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
essentially, the Egyptian civilization kind of started at its peak, ultimately, essentially, and then it just kind of went down. Like you say, that's true across other ancient civilizations where you've got these grand stone monuments built out of like huge chunks of stone, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we started using little bricks. Do you know what I mean? So there's evidence that, like you said, that this civilization began at its peak. So maybe they did find that technology. Maybe they did find those pyramids. And
Well, yeah.
there's also records to suggest that the pharaohs of ancient Egypt were different from the actual local population. So again, that suggests that they moved there from somewhere else, possibly
It
Atlantis.
may have been. Yeah.
I don't
It's
know, but
very likely. I mean, all you've got to do is look at the Sphinx. Anybody with an ounce of knowledge will tell you it couldn't have been designed to have a pharaoh's head. It's
no,
disproportionate.
it's
There obviously was maybe a jackal's head or a cat head on it.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. If you
and
look
they're
at how it's
thinking,
actually positioned,
yeah,
the back is
oh
flat
yeah,
like a dog, and a
yeah.
jackal's head would fit better
Yeah,
than a
but what
human.
have they done is if the pharaoh, to honor the pharaoh, they've said, right, let's get to working on that head and
Yeah,
chiseled it
yeah.
out and whatnot and made the pharaoh's head. But it's a tiny head on a large body.
Yes.
It's not right. And I think if there was their construction, because we've seen proper Egyptian construction and they are
Yeah.
amazing,
Detailed,
we would
absolutely.
have seen it in proportion because
And
uh,
again, that suggests that something was already there and they've kind of worked with what was there and refashioned it, rechipped it, which would explain why it's slightly smaller because you've got less to work with to begin with. But
so
it does
do we have a
suggest,
missing civilization?
yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
it
know.
does suggest though. I mean, like you say, depending on where you believe Atlantis was. I mean, there's a place in Africa which is perfectly round, exactly as Atlantis
Mm.
was described, and it's not a million miles away from there, which is on the coast, which could have got flooded to where Egypt was. You would think that if Atlantis
Are you
wasn't a
talking about the
North Atlantic,
Saqqara Eye? Are you
that's right. Yes, that's
Yeah, it
exactly
is
right.
very interesting.
Hmm.
I mean, it's always up for debate. People, you've got geologists that say, no, it's not natural, this. And then
Hmm.
you've got some geologists saying, yeah, it is natural. So it's like, what do you do? You know,
Again, it's just study into it. I mean, there's got to come a point where we can find proof of this. But I mean, instead of the arguments going back and forth, we need people to, okay, we don't know, let's find out. And that's what we kind of, well, not things come to
yeah.
a standstill, really.
Yeah,
We should get
apparently
Mark.
because You can see it from space. That's Saqqara Eye, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, and it might not be the exact location, but yeah, just going back to Atlantis, if it was in the North Atlantic, then, whether it was Antarctica, which drastically went south, civilizations would head to Africa, the continent, assuming it was there. Well, we know it was there 12,000
Yeah.
years ago. So that's a natural place for them to escape to.
We just don't think of them being as advanced, but they are. They are traveling,
Hmm.
and trading with other
Yeah.
countries. They knew the world was round. They knew how long it takes to traverse.
Yep.
And you think to yourself, well, and then we got worse, maybe a bit dumber,
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
because, people at some stage were thinking the earth is flat. We're going to fall off the end of it. We can't
Mm.
traverse, we just come to an end and that's the end of you. Didn't know that we lived on a globe, didn't know the size of it. The Egyptians did.
Yeah.
And you think to
True.
yourself, they knew it so much, and you think, how did he work all that out? So that doesn't just happen overnight.
No.
That type of education takes a bit of time. So I think they were quite pioneers. It seems throughout the world that is a place out. And one thing I'd love to have done is go back when Egyptian was at it, Egypt was at its peak, because
Mm.
I'm sure it would have looked a lot different than it does today.
Yeah.
These huge buildings, pyramids, all white with gold tips at the ends,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can't imagine that sight really in the middle of a desert.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
must have been tremendous to see.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's probably, I'd imagine loads of people would agree on that. It would be an amazing thing to see with your own eyes. I mean, it's a good place to wrap this up. The one thing we need to get his thoughts on, speaking of ancient Egypt, is possible connections between ancient Egyptian civilizations and their mystery schools, the Knights Templar,
The
Freemasons,
Knights Templar,
as it
yeah,
does seem to be a
absolutely.
nice little thread throughout history, basically. And we'd like to
It
get his
really is
thoughts
because
on
they
that.
got they got to everywhere. Knights Templars
Yeah.
went everywhere, and you can guarantee they would have gone to Egypt as
Oh, for
well.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Napoleon went there, took with his
Mm.
army. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, yeah.
they all had a bit of a stab at Egypt and stuff. It's been like pillaged and so many times.
Yeah.
Whatever, even the top stones off the Great Pyramids and stuff have been taken away and utilized somewhere else, probably for the king's chambers some years later or
Mm.
whatever.
Mm. Yeah.
But the King's Temple, should we say, is it it's right close to the Sphinx Temple. It looks like the stones have been used, but those stones are huge. How did you get them down then?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this is
Mm.
years and years later, they got them down.
Yeah, yeah, true enough.
Where? It's dreadful. I don't know how they do it. It's too many mysteries and not
Yeah.
enough answers, really.
That,
But I think it's a subject doesn't end, does it? It
no,
never ends.
it's like you say, the more questions or the more answers you get, the more questions arise, and it just self perpetuates basically. So, I mean, there's going to be loads for us to speak about, Steve. I know.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure they
looking
will
forward to
be.
speaking with Mark.
It'll be good fun when we're listening to Mark and
It
what he has to
certainly
say.
will. It will. It's been good fun speaking with you today, Steve. So thanks ever so
Thank
much
you.
as always. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out our interview with Mark Olly. That premieres at 9 p.m. And make sure you follow us on social media and leave your thoughts in the comments. And most of all, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Until next time, though, goodbye and take care.